subject lines
You know?
of emails have to be compelling. For
lines.
example, one of the ones that we wrote was losing winnable deals? Question mark with an emoji.
Question
By
mark.
the way, listeners, I know you might think this might be cheesy, but studies show that subject lines with an emoji have higher open rates. I know it sounds ridiculous, but hey, like we were alluding to, being different is better than being better.
Hey closers, it's Sophia and Carlos here with you again. Today we want to talk about, I think we're going to talk about prospecting, right?
We sure are. We're going to talk about prospecting. We're going to talk about the power of slowing down to speed up. What do you say is that smooth is slow? I don't know. Did we just have group mind? We did just have group mind. You knew where I was going.
I knew exactly where you were going.
And I know where you were going.
Well, I was in Houston last week with a client, and as you know, and somebody said this. Somebody said fast is slow, and I said, wait a minute, no, slow is fast. And I went, wait a minute, it's Conor McGregor, right? Conor McGregor says, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And then the sales lead there, like, no, that's not Conor McGregor. That's a military. It's a military, like a Navy SEALs or a Marine expression. And he's probably right because he's a real smart guy. But I prefer it as a Conor McGregor quote, don't you?
Well, listeners, Ish Tours, if you want to be the Conor McGregor or the Marine of prospecting, then please subscribe. First of all, hit subscribe to our podcast or YouTube channel. And second, keep listening because we're talking about today how to be efficient and effective, how to slow down to speed up when it comes to prospecting and really curating each step of your prospecting sequence. Some people might call it cadence. Some people might call it combos, your prospecting combos. And especially if you're going
almost like a strategy, right, Sophia? Almost like a strategy.
Almost like a strategy. Yeah.
Do you know how we know it's time to record the podcast?
How do we know?
Because your leaf blower shows up.
That's right.
That is bonkers. Does he look? Is he watching for you going on the podcast? And it's like, right, boys.
Go. Now they started now. Yeah,
that's amazing. So
there we go.
So why is this relevant today? Have you been working with Autumn on this today?
Yes, and I've been working with Autumn, who's on my team, on a cadence for pest control. Which why are we doing pest control again, Carlos?
So for our viewers and listeners, for our prospectors, for our closers. The way we approach it, because we've got one of those interesting businesses that can hit multiple industries. And what we do, and Sophia will explain in a minute why we decide to go, why we do that focus on particular industries. We focus down on particular industries. And, you know, I've had a lot of success in pest control. I know we make great impact in pest control. Now, why? Why do we make such great success in pest control? I think there's a bunch of reasons. One, it's one of those industries where the level of skill. Now, if you're in pest control and you're listening to this, you're going to get upset. I'm not talking to you. Basically, if you're listening to our channel, we know your level of skill is high. We know that. But there are some people in your industry where the level of skill and the level of execution and the sort of the mindsets of the salespeople, the behavioral model of the salespeople, and the skills, the techniques, they leave a lot to be desired. And so, in my experience, owners, CEOs, and sales leaders of pest control companies, they're often very frustrated with their team. They can't really wrap their mind around the human puzzle of getting a team to prospect, generate their own leads, close at good margins, at healthy margins, differentiate themselves in a crowded market. It's all the stuff that we're good at, Soph, and I could go on and on. All the stuff that we help people with just lands so sweetly in this little microcosm of pest control. And I think it's a kind of it's a segment that we can really wrap our arms around, territory by territory. And of course, it's not really that different in that respect from technology, financial services, construction. I could go on and on about the industries where our techniques and our selling system and our training style really creates a huge impact. It's one of those, and I like it. I like working with pest control guys. They're in a very crowded market, very difficult to differentiate yourself on a product or service side. So how do we differentiate ourselves on a sales side, selling side? And so it's one of my faves, and I'm really excited to see what the team can deliver in pest control. But why is it? Remind me why we went down this strategy instead of pointing ourselves at multiple industries at any one point in time. Why did we go sort of hyper focused?
Well, I have quite a simple answer. We've historically been all over the place. We've been industry agnostic, which we still are. We can help many industries, but I think we hired someone who is a little more green, and going from prospecting a wealth management firm to a roofer to a pest control company to a realtor, someone who was green and this is her first gig in selling and fresh out of college. We thought, hey, how about we get her verbiage a little more sophisticated by focusing on one vertical at a time. So it's been kind of fun, and I really think it's been beneficial to her. She really has been learning, along with the awesome case studies that you've been bringing in. We've been bringing in clients of that industry to sort of share how we've helped them. So that's been helpful.
It's great for mindset, that, right? So when we bring one of our clients in from the industry to say, hey, here's how you helped us, that does a lot for building confidence and conviction, which is magnetic in sales. Closers, you guys know that. Magnetic in sales is conviction. So it's right at the start of the strategy design. One of the things that Sophia and I do is we'll bring a client from that industry to talk to the team. And it's more than just conviction, though. They help us with like scripts and pain points and stuff, right?
Absolutely. I love what you say about the mindset, because guys, if you don't have a we've spoken about this in other episodes, haven't we, Carlos? That, and you wouldn't know this if you're not subscribed to our podcast, but we have spoken about this before, that if your mindset about your organization isn't strong, it's going to come across when you're prospecting, when you're in a sales meeting. So I think you're right. I think it does do a lot for the credibility, reliability, and faith and fanatical love for what you sell. I mean, we bleed what we sell, right? We bleed our stuff.
But I think it's also cool that because we get this super focused for like a month on a particular industry, so then we can get a client in. We can just be prepared, right? We get a client in. Client talks to us, helps us build our conviction, helps us understand the return on investment case so that we can flush out any money weakness right at the beginning, flush out those money issues, build a solid conviction around pricing too. And then we can, all talk between us about, hey, here are the clients we've worked with in this space. So everyone on the team, because not everybody on the team knows all the various clients that we've worked with over the years. So here are some of the clients that we've worked with. These are the ones that local guys know. That does a lot for our authority. When Autumn picks up the phone and calls an owner of a business, well, it does a lot for authority when Autumn can drop, hey, we've worked with this company and that company and the other company. And at that point, the owner can, for some owners, that's important. They go, oh, wow, okay, maybe I need to take this call a little more seriously than my instincts would have been. Because their instincts when they get a cold call or a cold email or a LinkedIn request, or I know you're going to share in a minute, I hope you'll share the the sequence that you have created with Autumn for specifically for pest control, because it is different for different buyers. But when they get that, whatever the point in the sequence that catches the attention, if they can pretty soon realize that, you know, we're not to be trifled with. We're not to be taken lightly. It's real. We're a real company. We're not just after, you know, getting, picking the guy's pocket. In fact, this morning, I was with a prospect, as you know, a prospect that Autumn cold called, I'm going to guess 3 weeks ago. I don't know, 3 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago. Maybe last week. Last week.
Maybe last week, maybe 2 weeks ago. Yeah. And the guy said, you know what he said? Very interesting. This is very interesting. You're going to enjoy it. You haven't told you this. He said to me, I never pick up cold calls, which, by the way, is what everybody who we've ever spoken to from a cold call says.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody says it. Well, I never pick up cold calls. But, here we go. But I picked up that one. I was in my car. I was driving, picked it up. And do you know what? There's enough of, and I do believe him. The guy wasn't a liar. He probably in his mind never means rarely, right? So when he says to me, I never pick up cold calls.
Right.
Of course that isn't the case because I was sat there with him, right? So for never read rarely, which is what he really meant, I rarely pick up cold calls. Hey, that's all right, buddy. I'll take rarely any day of the week to catch somebody's attention in doing an activity they rarely engage with. I'd rather catch their attention that way than something they're doing all the time. So we're not really standing out, right? I say, that is fabulous for me. I'll catch your attention in a manner that's unusual to you any day. It's like the old. Some of our listeners and viewers might be old enough to remember an old sales guy called Victor Kayam. He was very famous in the UK, and he was famous he was famous for owning Remington Microblade or Microsteel or whatever they were called. But he was a famous salesman before that, and I mean there aren't many famous sales. He wasn't a famous salesman. He was a salesperson of repute in his industry. It's not like he was wasn't on the cover of magazines as a salesperson, but he was a salesman of repute, and not ill repute, but repute. And he was well known for having a monkey. Have I ever told you this story? Victor Kayam. He would go into it. He used to sell paper and envelopes and office supplies back in the 50s and 60s when there was a lot of that shit getting sold, right? And he was famous for having a monkey. And he would go into a sales call with a monkey, and the monkey would go like wild in a prospect's office, like tear the place apart. And whenever he was asked, like, why have you brought a monkey in? He'd just be, you'll never forget me. You know, you're just never going to forget me. I'm the guy with the monkey. And he was very successful. I am not suggesting that our viewers and listeners go into a sales call with a monkey. I'm not. That's
what we teach our clients every day.
Well, it's the monkey class, right?
Yeah.
We should do the
then
monkey
when
class.
you get to a certain level, it's the anaconda class.
Yeah. The snakes in a bag. Just come in with snakes in a bag and release them.
That'll get you quality referrals.
Office. But it's I'll take memorable. So he said to me, I never pick up cold calls, which means I rarely pick up cold calls. Do you know? I hear it all the time from clients. Cold calls don't work. And then they just do. You can book a ton of appointments with cold call. I have a client, the one in Houston last week. They do they don't spend a
You gotta
dime
tell
on
Adam
marketing.
this.
All their prospecting is cold calls. So anyway, tell us about the sequence. There must be a few cold calls in that sequence.
Well, yes, there's a few cold calls in that sequence, but the point is that you want to build a sequence, whether you're using Salesforce, HubSpot, Zoho, wherever your sequence lives. You want to think about whether you're targeting certain industries, whether you're targeting residential versus commercial, whatever it might be. You want to think about that decision maker and who you want to speak to. And you want to create like an avatar. You want to think about that person.
Is that what you did with Autumn?
In a way, yes. Who is that person? Where are they hanging out? So, for example, pest control, we sort of determined that we're not going to exclude LinkedIn from our process because we're big LinkedIn prospecting believers. But chances are the founder, president of a pest control company, they're out on the road. It's not the pond that it's not the most likely pond that they're going to be hanging out in. So where is your prospect going to be hanging out? And what kind of bait can you present them? So the language that you use in that cold call, once you want to curate that talk track, that your elevator pitch, your 30-second commercial to that person and whiff them. What's in it for me, right? Everyone's favorite radio station. What's really in it for them? As a CEO, business owner, founder of a company, bottom line, revenue, right? That's probably what, how can you position what you're selling to what they're really going to care about? And so writing your emails too, with a lens on what's going to catch their eye. So I don't know, we spent all morning, pretty much the bulk of our day, writing emails and using data from gong.io, which I love. I love data. Using some of their prospecting white papers that I highly recommend, by the way, to curate a sequence in the HubSpot.
Well, we train gong.io and we partner with them, so we've got a good connection there. But I think it is interesting for you to take, like, we're about to kick off for next month the pest control activity, or has it started already? Did it
next
start
week?
This week? Next week starts next week, next month, and you've created your avatar. You've wrapped your mind around the pain points, so you've scripted, I would guess, a fabulous 30-second commercial, and with all the right hooks. I want to hear what's in the cadence, but you've made that cadence very personalized. You've said to yourself, you know what, we're not going to lean hot and heavy on LinkedIn. Whereas if we were working with, for example, a tech company, we probably would lean harder into LinkedIn. We're probably, you're getting your you've got your conviction high because we've spoke to some clients. You've got your avatar right because, there are big companies in pest control. There are some monster companies in pest control, but and we could flex our enterprise selling muscles at that, but that isn't what this next prospecting season is about. If maybe in a month's time we may decide to go for the big boys in pest control, which, by the way, would be cool. But we very much use our prospecting activity as a tool to design the pipeline that we want. So where we're prospecting is the pipeline of tomorrow, and our pipeline of tomorrow is our client base of the next day, right? So it's, as we've said on the podcast before, we want diversity. We want some elephants, some rabbits, some squirrels. We want some deer. We want some big monster accounts. They're great, but we also want a ton of medium-sized accounts, which is what Autumn's going to be going at next week and for the weeks after. So we can really think about that. And then we can also think about what's important to that owner.
So subject lines of emails have to be compelling. For example, one of the ones that we wrote was losing winnable deals, ? With an emoji. By the way, listeners, I know you might think this might be cheesy, but studies show that subject lines with an emoji have higher open rates. I know it sounds ridiculous, but hey, like we were alluding to, being different is better than being better. Right? Using their first name, bolding their first name, using a pain point, using their company name in there, bolding it, because that person is whizzing through their inbox and they're deciding what to discard and what to spend any time on. And when they see their name, their company name, and a pain point that they might have, you want them to see that as soon as possible. You don't want a wall of text. You want to be straight to the point in an email, and you want them to see their name and company name multiple times and something that they resonate with. You want to put a little salt in their wound a little bit, and that's what's going to keep make them read the whole email. Now, I will admit, listeners, that emails yield the least number of appointments. But you got to think about that doesn't mean you don't do them, right? Just because pest control companies, their leaders are unlikely to be on LinkedIn doesn't mean that I throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's still part of our process to see if they're on there first. But it's a slice of the pie. You've heard us talk about this before, Ishtwers, that when it comes to prospecting, we have to have different slices of the pie. We can't just rely on, if you're only using 2 channels to reach decision makers, it's not enough. I would say you need at least a third, and I would say a fourth and a fifth in there. We've also started, is your prospect potentially on Facebook? Something we've found with a lot of these pest control companies that some of them don't even have a website. They use their Facebook page as a website. So let's hang out where they're at. Let's join Facebook groups. Let's join Florida pest control, Florida home improvement groups, and pillage and plunder there.
It's also interesting to think about in that industry, what gets measured, because that usually speaks to the language that's going to resonate. For example, in pest control, what resonates is units. It's a volume game. Now, we know that what we like to do is drive value, right? And of course, volume becomes value. But there are other companies where what they're measuring is margin. If I'm a software, a SaaS business, what I'm measuring is things like average customer annual recurring revenue, and I'm measuring churn, and I'm measuring there's a bunch of things I measure as a software business that's very different to what I measure as a pest control business. Now, P&L's a P&L, and they look very similar. So you might be fooled into thinking, surely it's all about the dollars, isn't it? You know, it isn't. It isn't. You have to use the language and the measurements that resonate with them. And I would encourage you, Sophia and Autumn, to talk about units, volume. It's a volume play. They go for volume in the confidence that the margin follows, that the finances, the P&L will follow the volume, and all their management reports. I'm telling you now, if they've come out of corporate pest control, which most of them have, it's a volume game. Their number one objective is new units. If they're a residential, it's new residential units. If they're commercial, it's new commercial units. It's constantly oriented for net new units. And it's cool to know that, because, you know, we're generating scripts and emails and LinkedIn messages. And I'm curious, what are the different modalities you are using? Because you've got a very specific cadence for pest control that you've generated, right? So you don't need to give us blow by blow, but what are the different modalities? There's cold calls for sure.
And emails and Facebook. Nice. and LinkedIn.
Nice. Are you doing any video or not?
The video that we use is the breakup email video.
Oh, you're just doing the last of the last in the cadence is the breakup. What is also interesting, and I wish one day we should get Autumn on to talk about this, but it is interesting, I think, that it's easy to overlook that LinkedIn step and the email step, because you think it's the phone call that always lands them. But isn't it the case that it's that phone call that went after that email or after that LinkedIn request? It's how the email and the LinkedIn request and the Facebook and all those other modalities, the text messages, it's how those supercharge the next telephone call. And it's the telephone call that looks like it was the winner, but it wouldn't have stood on its own as the winner. It needs to stand sort of arm in arm with the email and the text message and all the other modalities.
Yeah, which I don't recommend text messaging before you've created a relationship with a prospect.
Sophia, they're going to throw you out of the millennial club. What are you talking about?
I think text messages
don't recommend
not in cold prospecting. Once it's warm, yes, but I don't believe you should send a I don't believe so, but maybe, I don't know. What are your thoughts? You think she should send a cold text message?
I get a lot of them. Now, that doesn't mean I'm buying a lot from them, but I'm getting a lot of them. So is there some, have you looked at the data on this? There will be. We should check out HubSpot, or there'll be some data as to whether
I know that John Rosso did a 21st century prospecting session a couple of years back about how text messages at the right point of the cadence are effective.
What about when working in this sequence and designing this avatar? How have you gone about thinking about who you need to speak to, whether it's an owner, a CEO, a VP of sales, or a sales manager? Like, have you thought about which is the right level to get in at?
From the top down. I would always rather speak to the real Slim Shady, the owner, president, founder, CEO, before any VP, director, manager. And so that's why I noticed that we were using a pattern interrupt that was, I don't know if you're the right person to speak to. And it was literally pretty much asking that CEO, founder, president of the company to direct you to someone lower on the totem pole, which was...
That's true.
Right. It's not. It's pretty much asking them to tip you, send you elsewhere, which is what we don't want. If you get on the phone with the final boss, so that's who you want to speak to.
So what are you using as the new pattern interrupt?
I'm not sure if it even makes sense.
I don't know if my name rings
I don't know if it even makes sense to have a conversation. Let me tell you why I'm calling, and then you can decide if it makes sense to continue speaking, or I'll get out of your hair forever.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. And what do we do? Have we done a lot of reviews of the list? Because guys, for our closers out there, if you're prospecting, don't underestimate the importance of that list. Some people think they can overcome list quality with volume. No. What is it Sophia always says? One of Sophia's rules is what is
reach the people that count versus counting the people you reach.
That's right. So you want to reach the people who count. So have we poured a lot of love and time into?
Yes, we have.
Is this list good?
Sure have.
Yeah. Let me tell you that those hours spent poured into the list, in my experience, will pay.
It reminds me of like the dating apps. Like the more you want to use a lot of filters. Now, you can't. You want to use a lot. There's a lot of filters.
You got to put a lot of Vaseline on the lens. You got to
not like photo filters, but like in filters of like age range, mile radius. Are they looking for a relationship, or are they looking for a good time? Right? Are they? You got to have. Are they? Do they have children already? There's a lot of filters that you can use on the dating apps, and with these databases.
So here it's a different world. I don't understand.
Okay, so same thing. When you're downloading leads lists, you want to use those filters. Now you got to be careful with the filters, because you can't use so many filters that you get a list of 10 people. But if you do, does it make more sense to stretch out the cadence and have more touches in the cadence to 61 contacts versus 5 general touches to 200 contacts? I don't know. You tell me. I rather have 61 contacts that look good, that have the mobile number available, that it's the right person that I'm speaking to, that's headquartered in the right territory, and then have 2,000. This one's missing the email. This one's missing the phone number. This one is the general manager. This one, right? I'd rather distill down.
This is the front desk. This is their China. This is their Beijing office.
If you're targeting everyone, you're targeting no one.
You know what? What I think Sophia's described for our callers today is the foundation of a prospecting strategy. It's pick your vertical, contact people that count rather than count the people you contact. So make sure the list is great. For the sales leaders out there, get some clients in to build that conviction. You know, your clients love you. They wouldn't be spending money with you if they didn't. Your customers love you. So get to build that conviction. That conviction's magnetic, that mindset. And then make it really personal for that avatar, that industry, that client profile, that ideal client profile. Make it hyper personalized. And then once the team's ready and the list is ready and your cadence is ready, it's like the starting gun goes, and it's all hands on deck to mix our metaphors. Is that right, Sophia?
So subscribe.
Go for it.
To our channel. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to listen to more episodes like this.
Make sure you like. Make sure you tell your friends. Make sure you're prospecting, guys. There isn't anybody in sales that gets out of prospecting. And for this week, it's goodbye from Sophia.
And goodbye from Carlos.
Take care, folks.